Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Carlo Prusa MMA. I'm Carlo Prusa with a special guest today. My guest is a former UFC fighter. She's fought in Invicta. She's fought for titles in Bellator. She's taking on Viviane Pereira this Friday in Detroit, Michigan, XFC Grand Prix 2. She's got her dog in the background. It is Vitamin D, Miss Deanna Bennett. Deanna, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining with me today. So we're just a few days out from the contest, fighting in Detroit, Michigan. You've been doing this for a long time now. What is your mindset like on fight week? What is it like now, and what does it turn into when you're actually going to get to the destination and you're closer to the weigh-ins and all that fun stuff?
I'm just excited to fight, honestly. My last fight was a year ago, and I haven't gotten in the cage since then, and I've been wanting so badly to get to the cage since then, and so I'm just kind of excited for the opportunity, working hard, spending some time with my dog and cat, which is nice because normally fight week they send you out way early, and I don't get to spend fight week with my family and pets and everything, and so I'm glad to be able to spend most of my fight week here at home and spend time with them in between trainings and be with my team, and you know I'm enjoying it. It's great.
Now, you've been in this world of combat sports for quite a while now. How did Deanna Bennett get her foot in the door of this crazy world we call combat sports?
Peer pressure. It's a series of peer pressure got me into MMA. I wrestled in high school, really loved that, but I broke my ankle my senior year, like right before the state tournament, and was like crushed. And so in college, I took a kickboxing class just for because I don't know, I get fat. It's a thing. I took it just because I had to for a credit and joined a gym so I could stay in shape. And with that, I just joined the gym and they're like, hey, we want to have you do some smoker fights. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And they're like, well, you're going to. And I said, no. And so naturally, I did it because they kept on asking me to, and ended up really loving that. And then, but I always saw them in the back room doing jujitsu. And I was like, that's kind of like wrestling, like I used to do. Like that looks like a lot of fun in there. And so I joined jujitsu, and then they again were like, hey, we're going to have you take an MMA fight. And I was like, probably not. And then, of course, naturally, I did. And the second I hit that cage, I was like, this is it. Like, the feeling I got when I got into a cage was something that I had never experienced before. And I knew from the very second that, well, I was panicking going in there. And the second they shut the cage door, I was like, all right, well, I got to fight this girl to get out of here. So I guess this is it. But that was it for me. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And I've loved it. And then it's been so long since that fight. And I still love it. And I love what I do.
You know, the sport in this day and age, 2024, has gone so culturally accepted. It is so mainstream. I mean, people talk about it every single night at the dinner table in some households. 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't the case. The sport was still, building. It was still not fully sanctioned in many places across the U.S. since 15 years ago. When you first started competing, do you have any crazy, wild fighting horror stories of maybe mystery opponents, bad fighting locations, bad medicals, anything wild?
Oh man, I've been to some promotions. Well, before I even started fighting, I was working on an ambulance, and I'd go and actually watch some. They always had to have an ambulance at fights, and so I'd go and do standbys and work those. And we were like in the back of a bar, and there's these people. They're like, "Oh, I've won 60 street fights, and I'm in here just to trade fisticuffs," and watching them get knocked out in like 10 seconds, and kind of shady stuff going on. And I've I've seen things. I've been to venues where people in the back and we're warming up, and there's literally like, I started in Utah. Just say that before I finish the sentence. But there'd be like chickens running through the workout area where you're warming up stuff, and I was like, yeah, this doesn't seem sanitary or anything. This literal chicken just ran past me as we're trying to wrestle right here. But all right, that's cool. Yeah, it's I've been around. I've seen things, and things have grown so much since then. And I'm just I'm so happy for how the sport has grown, because when I first got into it, like a lot of the people that I knew, they're like, you want to do what? Thankfully my dad was really supportive, but everybody else was like, I don't understand, I don't get it, I think you're stupid, but go have fun. And I was like, all right, I'm okay being stupid, I'm gonna go have fun. And yeah.
When you think of the landscape of women mixed martial arts, that is something that has really evolved. You know, it wasn't too long ago that Dana White was saying that women would never fight in the UFC. Ronda Rousey comes around, everything changes, and now, I mean, some of the greatest fighters ever are women. When you first started this, did you think that the whole WMMA scene would blow up as much as it did?
Honestly, I had the hope for it, but I didn't have any expectations, because I remember when he flat out said women will never fight in the UFC, and I was like, well, that sucks, because I'm still female, so that's a thing. But it never deterred my love for it. And, I always had that hope that it would happen. And thankfully, he's not quite a man of his word on that. But it's amazing to see this. And I'm actually an instructor at a gym. I teach the kickboxing program, and then I teach MMA classes there. And well, yes, I teach jiu-jitsu too, but just for the kids, I teach those too. And we have these students that they're like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, and seeing these girls that are so motivated. And, I have a couple of these female students that they're like, I want to be in the cage one day, and I know you're going to be my coach in my corner. And like that right there was probably one of the best feelings of my life, just like inspiring these girls to go into the cage. And she's like, you're going to be in my corner, and I can't wait, and I'm going to be a champion. And I was like, my heart can't take this. This is adorable. And just to have that opportunity, she has that opportunity. She can grow up and she can be a UFC champion, and mark my words, she will one day be. And I'll be right there coaching her. It's going to be great. But it almost makes me cry.
You know, one thing I love about covering regional mixed martial arts is that you just never know who's going to be on the card, and you never know what they're going to do with their careers. And I think your second fight on your pro career is a testament to that. Took on Juliana Pena, was able to pick up a big win there. Obviously, she went out to have a very successful UFC career, champion, all that. What is it like knowing that you first off, you fought, look at your list. I mean, you fought some very high level people. You've been some very high level people. And what's it like, do you take any pride maybe in that when you watch Juliana succeed, go out there and beat Amanda, knowing that, you beat her early in her career?
Yeah, I've always, from the very beginning, like I said, I just loved fighting. And so if somebody said, hey, we have a fight for you, call it stupid, but I was like, all right, I'm in. I don't really care. I really do not care. And even still to this day, I really don't care who you put across from me, because I know what I'm capable of. And when I'm 100%, I know I'm good. That's not cocky, that's confidence. Let me just say it right there. But that Juliana Pena fight is probably one of my favorites. I would take any opportunity to punch her in the face, and the fact that they paid me to punch her in the face, that's amazing. And holding that win is one of my favorite moments, honestly. And I'm saying that because she was not a great person to me after that fight, and said a lot of bad stuff about me after that fight, and made a lot of excuses. And it's like, okay, well, you had an opportunity in that cage and you didn't do it, so you don't need to have excuses. And that fight actually happened 3 months before the Ultimate Fighter tryouts. And I went to there, but they told me I didn't have enough fights, so I only had 2 fights at the point, so they didn't take me for season 18. But that's the show that she went and won. And like right before she won the Ultimate Fighter, it was the last fight before that show. And so I was like, ugh. But every time we were there, I would sit right next to her, literally, because they kept me for medicals and stuff. And I was like, oh, good morning, Juliana. And she would just like, I'm like, oh, so we're going to play that game. All right. So we really aren't a nice person. So I take a lot of pride in that fight. And like, obviously she won the title. No, she's a great fighter. Know what she's capable of. But I just, like I said, I never cared about who was across the cage for me. I got into that cage for the love of fighting, and I still get in that cage for the love of fighting, and that's what's important to me.
You know, you kind of alluded to it, but obviously you were on the Ultimate Fighter 26, two coaches, Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje. What a great season. How was that whole experience? What was it like being cooped up in the house with a bunch of other crazy fighters? Did you enjoy it?
I absolutely loved being on the Ultimate Fighter. It's one of the highlights of my career, my life, my everything. It brought me to where I am today. I loved it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. Being on Eddie Alvarez's team, I like how you say cooped up in the house, because it really was. It was like white collar prison, because it's like, hey, you're living in a mansion, but you can't leave ever. And I was like, cool about that part. But the people that were on my team, with the exception of one of them, that's okay, she wasn't on our team in the end, loved every single one of them, and still wish them well to this point. I made some really good friendships off of there. I had a really good experience. Like, I just got to go there, train every day. They fed us. Our focus was fighting, and I missed my dog that I had at the time, but beyond that, that's what I wanted to do, was go in there and fight. And like, if they ever called me again and said, hey, we want you again on the show, I would immediately, because like I said, that's what I love to do. I love to fight, and obviously I would miss my fiance, my dog, my cat, but I loved it. The Ultimate Fighter was great, and that's why after the show I loved the team, Eddie Alvarez and the coaches he brought in, and I actually ended up moving to Jersey after that, because that's where he was training in. So it really shaped the life that I have right now.
Did you learn anything from Eddie that kind of stuck with you and helped with your success for the rest of your career after that point?
Well, before that point, no one really had told me to keep my hands up, and so I learned that lesson a little bit the hard way. But I could have done without the kick to the head from Sarge. But from Eddie itself, just kind of the hard work that they did, just little things about training, and fight strategy, fight technique. I learned a lot from him. Like, he was an amazing coach, and the coaches that he brought in were absolutely great. And I was just, like I said, that's why after the show got done, I packed up my stuff from Utah, packed up whatever I could fit into my car, and just drove across. And I didn't know how long I was going to be. I was planning on 3 months, and now we're going on many, many, many years later, still being in the Jersey area. And like I said, it was great, and I learned a lot from having him as a coach.
What was that like, taking those fights on short notice? I mean, obviously you were in kind of in like an Apex environment before the Apex really became popular. Was that really difficult to adjust? Did that add a whole new element to preparing for a fight?
Absolutely, because before we got there, they're like, okay, you could fight as soon as day 3, but you don't know. And so I was like, all right, well, that's fun. And we were cooped up in a hotel room, and so our workout was, I would run from one corner to another for 30 minutes. And I was like, this is crazy. We're doing like prison workouts in here, squats and that stuff, because you have to keep your weight down, because we didn't know when we were going to be fighting. And I was the second fight on the show, which is nice because it was soon. But they said that I was ready, and I won the fight. And it just, not knowing when you're going to fight and everything, that it is a little bit hard. That's probably the most difficult part, is fighting multiple times on short notice. I feel like part of the reason I did get knocked out was because I was a little bit dehydrated, because I had just fought not too long before that and had to do a whole other weight cut again. So there's an argument with that for weight cutting and stuff. But it was, like I said, I wouldn't change it for anything. I wish I would have had a third fight on the show. I wish I could do it again. Like, it was an amazing experience.
You made your UFC debut at the finale card, ended up in a majority draw. Overall, what was that experience like? I mean, was that kind of a surreal moment to finally make an actual UFC card?
It was. It was an amazing experience. The fight camp I had wasn't my best, and honestly, if I had to say, what fight was your worst, unfortunately, that would be the fight that I picked out. That's the fight that I always bring to, like, I will never do that again kind of thing. But the experience itself, being on the UFC card, having that experience in my life was amazing. And like I said, I wish I would have done a few things differently leading up to it in that fight camp and everything. But I'm just happy that I can look back and say that I had that experience. I've done a lot of things in my fight career that a lot of people haven't had an opportunity to, and I'm really grateful for that.
One of those things that not a lot of people have the opportunity to do is fight for a world title. Your last fight, fought against Liz Carmouche. Obviously not the way you wanted it to go, but what was that experience like for you? And do you think you grew stronger and I guess more mentally as a fighter?
Yeah, oh man, that was something. And like I said, I always count my blessings in the sport. The opportunity to fight for a world title, for an organization like Bellator that I love so much, was absolutely amazing. Again, had a kind of a rough fight camp for that one. Pushed a little too hard. Went into that fight with a broken foot that I broke a week before. The day before I flew out to Hawaii, I broke my foot, and so it kind of put fight week. Fight week was a little hard. If you go back and watch that fight, you'll see both my feet are completely taped up because one of them was broken. And it made things a little hard, but I wasn't gonna pull out of that fight because I wanted that experience so bad and I wanted that title. And the first 3 rounds of the fight were really great. I liked the first 3 rounds of it. That's the fighter that I am, and got caught in the end of the 4th round, and unfortunately, scorecards don't matter when you get submitted. So the first 3 rounds went to me, but then the 4th round I got caught, and so it is what it is. But I learned a lot from that fight, not just in fighting, just in life in general, with a lot of different things. Like, my life was actually, from that fight until now, over a little bit over a year later, my life is actually very drastically different, and I wouldn't change that. And so it's all because of that fight, and so I'm grateful for it. I have a fiance now. He was my wrestling coach. He's my fiance. We have a family with the dog and the cat that I mentioned earlier that are down here warming my feet for me. And so I learned a lot. And going into this fight this weekend, I'm taking all of those lessons that I learned into that. And so I'm excited to put it all out there this weekend.
You fought against Liz 2 times. Do you take any pride being able to step in there in the cage with one of the first 2 women to fight in the UFC?
Absolutely. She's a tough fighter. She absolutely, she's an amazing fighter. Personally, not a fan. That's just because she said some real awful things about me and made some excuses, but it is what it is. I opened myself up for that, for not doing the things that I should have been doing. If you look at the scorecards for our 2 fights, she didn't win a single round. I won on the papers. I won every single round. Unfortunately, she was able to crack off the submission. She's a good black belt, and so I knew that was something that could happen. But I take pride in the fact that I went out there with one of the best in the world. She's a world champion. Other people lasted 12 seconds with her. She's been dominant completely and everything. And so for me to be able to say, like, for me personally, just knowing the fighter that I am, that she didn't win a single round against me, that's a point of pride for me. Obviously I don't dwell on it, because the end of the fight is, okay, well, look at the results and she submitted me. But it just, knowing who I am as a fighter, I take that with me. I would never put it out there for everybody else, but look at this right here. But it's just a reminder to myself of the fighter that I am.
All right, now shifting back over to XFC, you're taking on Viviane Pereira this weekend, or this Friday. Overall, what do you think of her as an opponent?
She's great. She's resilient. She had a long layoff as well, a lot longer than mine, but that's because she brought life into the world, and kudos to her for that, because that's an amazing feat to do. But she's tough. We fought on the same card in Invicta before. seen her as a fighter. She's been in the UFC. She's got a great record, fought against some really good people. And so it's not like I would never take a fight lightly against anyone. Doesn't matter who it is. Even like my last fight was a world champion, but even if it wasn't, even if it was their very first fight, I always tell myself, like, this person is a world champion. This person is coming for everything that you wanted. And so that's the same for this one. Like, I know she's resilient. I know she's not an easy fight. And so I'm excited for it, because like I said before, I always like to test myself at the cage. I want to go in there with the best that I possibly can. And she's a great fighter. And so I'm really excited that after a year, I'm able to get back into the cage with a good fighter like her.
You have more experience. Do you think that's going to play big dividends in this one?
It definitely does help having the in cage time. You have the fight. Well, what's the word I'm looking for? Weight cut brain just kicked in. The fight knowledge, and just being able to know what to do if things are going rough, and be able to change up game plans, stuff like that. And so it does play a little bit of role. She's had a decent amount of fights too. So I'm not saying, oh, I know exactly what to do better than her. So you never know. You never know what you get when you get into the cage. But yeah, I think it's definitely going to help in my favor.
You mentioned since the Carmouche fight, you're in a totally different headspace, a lot of good things going for you now. Do you think that's helped you maybe evolve and adapt a new mindset that's going to translate positively to the fight game?
Absolutely. Just being able to have people around me, and I mentioned my fiance, and he's actually my main training partner, even though he's a 205-pound gorilla. But that's what I get to train with every single day, and gets to push me in the cage. And like I said, he was my wrestling coach and always helps me out with that. And if I'm having bad days in the training room, he helps motivate me, try and keep a positive mindset with everything. That's his biggest thing, is trying to keep a positive mindset. And we're both trying to grow together to reach our goals. He's been the one, like, we got to get Bia back in the cage. And he's actually how I got this fight, is because we were trying to get fights. And so he was messaging every single promoter that was out there. So if there's any random promoters that hear this, I'm sorry, but not sorry, actually, because I really wanted to fight too, because he knows how much I love fighting and want to be in that cage. And having a partner like that that's in your corner helps you on your hard days, like the days where you're like, I don't know if I can do this, but you have somebody that's like, you shut your mouth because you can. It's like, all right, I'm going to shut my mouth because I know that I can. And so that helps. And like I said, being able to have a training partner, a training partner and a partner for life, like, that's been such a blessing to me. And I'm just really grateful for that.
I asked UFC lightweight Grant Dawson about this. He's also married to a fighter, and he says being married to a fighter is the ultimate cheat code. It's like a life hack, because he's like, Elle knows when not to talk to me, knows when to talk to me. Do you feel the same thing?
Absolutely. Well, he's a talker, so he really loves talking. Well, if anyone knows him, he's a talker to me. But he knows when it's like, all right, we're in serious mode and we just got to grind. We know when we need to put the work in. And yeah, it's great. It's a blessing, because people outside the sport, he doesn't do MMA himself. He just does jujitsu, but he's very high level jujitsu. Just had a match actually this last weekend on the Fury card. Fury. I don't know, that big card that they had last weekend in Philly. But high level took fourth place at the ADCC West Coast Trials, which is an amazing feat. And being able to be there and seeing like the dedication that he puts in every day, and helps me put in the dedication myself. And so it definitely helps. Like, for me, I know when he's competing, that's like, all right, we know when to be quiet. And for him, the same, for the most part.
You know, this XFC promotion is really looking like it's doing big things. There's a whole rebirth from it. They're starting to do shows again. They had a very successful one in Lakeland a few months ago, and now they're back in Detroit. And when you look at the card, I mean, I think 6 former UFC fighters in this.
Yeah.
You two, Zach Paga, Alex Nicholson, Pearl Gonzalez. I think there's one more. But what is it like to be able to fight on a regional promotion with this much star power, if you will?
It's great. You know, I'm glad there's going to be a lot of people, hopefully a lot of people tune in and watch the fights, because I think from top to bottom of the card, it's going to be really great. One of the other guys that trains in Philly, where I used to train, he's on the card, and people should definitely tune in for that one. His name's Igor. He's from Ukraine, and amazing fighter. I think it's actually his first fight in the US. I know he's been here for a while, but hasn't been able to get into the cage yet. But even though he's not a name, he will be. And so you guys should check out for that. But, you know, Pearl's always been around. You know, we fought on a lot of the same Invicta cards. She's been around. The main event, all of the different people there. I think it's great for XFC. They're trying to build something special, and I think that's great to have more promotions around that gives more fighters opportunities, and excited to be part of it.
With the win over Viviane, do you think that helps you scale back to the Bellators, PFLs, maybe closer to the UFC? If that's something you want to still try to continue?
I mean, absolutely. I always want to try and elevate where I'm at. You know, I want to fight for the best organizations because I want to fight the best people. Like, I don't want to take easy fights. I don't want to go in there and be like, whatever, light work. I'm like, I want to test myself because I love fighting, and that's what I'm in this for. And so, yeah, you know, go out there, make the weight and put on a show, which that part is the most important part for me. Show what I'm capable of, and then see what comes from there, whether it's more fights with XFC or any of the other promotions, you know, Invicta, Bellator, UFC, whatever. Wherever they'll take me to fight, I'm going to show that I'm an asset to any promotion that wants to have me on their roster, and I'm going to get those wins up so I can get another title experience for one of the organizations.
All right, Deanna, last question for you. In a perfect world, what happens Friday night when you take on Viviane Pereira?
Ooh, I like that one. Perfect world. I go out there, we touch gloves, and I do my mojo. Can't give away my secret game plan, but ends within regulation. And I get my hand raised. That's it. So I want to finish. Like I said, I want a good show. And so that's what I've been training for. And that's perfect world. That's what happens, whether it's a, you know, knockout, which I would love, that I've been working for, or, you know, ground and pound submission. We'll see. Yeah, she's tough, but I'm looking to put her away. And I mean that very respectfully, because I do value her as an athlete and everything. And so, but I got a point to prove. And so we're going to go for it.
Who do we have here? Who's joined you now?
This right here is Sarah Connor. So she always comes into my interviews, and she was sitting on me. So I was like, all right, Sarah Connor, you can be there real fast. So usually she just puts her butt into the camera. So thankfully she was appropriate today.
Well, Deanna, thank you so much for talking to me. I wish you nothing but the best, and looking forward to watching you get back in the cage Friday night.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.